Trump survives, gold pumps, and XRP stays ready. Folks, in this update, we're going to talk about what just happened over the past 24 hours, the second attempt at President Trump's life, and then we're also going to be taking a look at when the next phase of this bull run is set to begin, right? We're watching the markets right now. They're responding and anticipating that Fed rate cut coming up this week. We got a series of dates and events lined up that take us up from here until the election that's going to bring volatility to these markets. How do we ride out the storm, and what comes next as far as when we get set free, the next phase of this bull run? When will XRP go up? The question that you guys all want answered. So without further ado, I want to get right on into this update, guys. Everything's at ZachRector.com. I appreciate you guys for supporting the cause. Let's rock and roll. Now, starting off here, I'm going to go through what we know now. I wanted to wait about 24 hours now for the dust to settle, the facts, the evidence, the research to come about. And boy, does the internet move quickly now. And so I'm going to show you guys that. We are going to ask a couple questions. I'm not going to try to speculate on this situation too much, but we have some reasonable questions that we must ask now that we've had a second assassination attempt against President Trump. And I want to make the point that this is one of the black swan event scenarios that unfortunately we've, kind of been preparing for or waiting for. And we were, once again, a couple millimeters away from President Trump losing it there in Pennsylvania, and we avoided another scare event here yesterday. I want everybody to understand that if he had, if it would have been a bad situation there, what that would have done to our markets, that would have been a 50% cutting of the markets right in half, and maybe even more, but it really would have been carnage in the markets if this would have happened. Now, thankfully, it didn't, but this is what we know so far. The shooter has been identified as Ryan Ruth. This is from Finance Lot. His social media page is pretty wild. He's a radical who directly recruited soldiers for Ukraine and Taiwan. Now, this is from New York Times, which actually interviewed Ryan last year in 2023. Now, they interviewed him in regards to his recruiting of, basically Americans, and even trying to get Afghan soldiers who fled the Taliban to go fight in Ukraine. And I'll read this off for you guys. With Legion growth stalling, and that's the foreign legion in Ukraine, Ryan Ruth, a former construction worker from Greensboro, North Carolina, is seeking recruits from among Afghan soldiers who fled the Taliban. Mr. Ruth, who spent several months in Ukraine last year, said he planned to move them, in some cases illegally, from Pakistan and Iran to Ukraine. He said dozens had expressed interest. Quote, "We can probably purchase some passports through Pakistan, since it's such a corrupt country," he said in an interview from Washington. Now, you guys can actually watch these clips in the interview. It's still there live on the internet. Now, they have removed his Twitter account, so you can no longer scroll through his Twitter account. I did, and it was just full of this guy saying that he was willing to go die for Ukraine. He was willing to sacrifice himself to go to Ukraine, but he wanted to bring more people. It was all about, I'm willing to go fight, but I want to bring more people with me. This needs to be a worldwide movement to go fight in the front lines of Ukraine. And there's an interview, right, where he's on the, right in front in D.C., right in front of Congress, right, doing an interview explaining his efforts to recruit folks for Ukraine. And then he was also trying to get folks for supporting Taiwan as well. So very interesting connections. We're trying to dig into this guy and where he comes from. He has an extensive arrest record. He's been detained in connection with a second attempted shooting of Trump. Now, as of this morning so far, he's only been charged for illegally possessing a gun. That's it so far. At this hour, as I record this 12:30 on the West Coast, that's going to be 3:30 Eastern. I'm recording this update right now. I'm going to drop it right after I'm done. He's only been charged for illegal gun possession. He's a felon. He's not supposed to have any guns. And what we know now, and this is the interview right here. You can see it
all of
right
our
here.
Contacts in Ukraine.
This is him speaking about his contacts in Ukraine. He's right here in front of Congress, right? Talking about his connections in Ukraine. How was this guy so connected? And crazy enough, this guy actually appeared in a video for Ukraine and bringing support for Ukraine. That's him right there. Let me bring this back. That's him right there. So he's in a video for Ukraine. And remember, the last attempt, the guy was in a BlackRock video. You guys remember that one, right? The Pennsylvania shooter? He was in a BlackRock ad. Now, a lot of folks are saying that this was a BlackRock ad, which I don't think was the case. I don't think it was BlackRock. I think it was done by somebody else. But it looks like it was another video done in support of Ukraine to get more money, weapons, military. And this guy, he was trying to get soldiers to come to Ukraine. Now, Governor Ron DeSantis has announced that the state of Florida will be conducting its own investigation into this attempt on President Trump. The feds keep desperately trying to make you forget about what happened the first time in Butler. Do not let that happen again. There's already so many questions that we have, including this one here from Finance Lot. How did the shooter know precisely when Trump was entering hole 5? He drove up, jumped out of his car, ran through the woods to the fence. He was only a few hundred yards away, fired 4 rounds before he was spotted. And then he didn't get captured till he was actually, I believe they say, he was miles away by the time they actually captured him, right? So he was able to do this and then run off. And the thing about this, the Trump team has now come out and said that this was a last-second event that they didn't have planned. It was not on his schedule. And so now there's questions coming out about, is there a rat, is there a mole inside of the Trump team? And where is this coming from? And is this potentially going to out that person, right? Very interesting. Now, the Trump campaign has today released over 50 examples of Democrats' rhetoric that, quote, inspired assassination attempt. I got to say, this is a very sad spot that we've reached here in our political cycle, right? We all want to see this election go through smoothly, and we wish that it didn't have to involve what's taking place here. This is where we're at right now. Probably going to be one of the most interesting, never before seen election cycles in our history that we're now living through. Now, Trump's response, I will never surrender. There were gunshots in my vicinity, but before rumors start spiraling out of control, I wanted you to hear it first. I am safe and well. Nothing will slow me down. I will never surrender. I will always love you for supporting me. Unity, peace, and making America great again. Now, let's focus here on 1 second. So today at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, Trump's going to be doing an update on his DeFi project, where this is where he said he wants to leave the banks behind. So we know what Trump stands for. We know what he wants to implement. Now he's set to disrupt DeFi, disrupt the banking system, leave the banks behind. And just a couple days before this attempt happens, just pointing out, maybe it's a coincidence, right? What's also interesting is that we get the full moon coming in tomorrow, the full harvest moon, which brings us into another astrological event, a lunar eclipse, partial lunar eclipse that starts on the 17th, concludes on the 18th, which takes us into Jerome Powell and the Fed's decision on interest rates, right? So this is why I'm saying we have a lot of dates, events, and energy all coinciding right now. What an incredible time to be alive. And thank God President Trump is still alive, because even if Trump's not going to win this election, right, we want it to happen in a fair, free election where Kamala is selected over Trump, and it's a peaceful transition to power. What's happening right now, though, is very sad. The divisiveness, the rhetoric that's coming out, and where we've gone is very incredible. And I don't think that it's over, right? So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how this is going to play out. And what I'm worried about is if there's even more attempts on his life too. There's still plenty of time between now and the election, plenty of time between now and the inauguration when he would step back in to the White House. And of course, just the fact that we're at a point in our country where folks, instead of, participating in a democratic process to elect a leader, would rather just see people deplatformed, would rather see people censored, or in the case of President Trump, they'd rather just see him taken out. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions that still remain from this whole situation. You guys can let me know in the comments down below what you think about this whole deal. I'm praying for America. That's where I'm at right now. And I'm praying for this country, not only based off that, based off the economic data as well, because despite what came out today with the Empire State Manufacturing showing positive growth for the first time in over a year, I've been looking at some other economic data with you guys, and it's not looking pretty. Now, this week, going to be a massive week. We get home builder confidence, retail sales coming out as well on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday is the day that we get the housing starts, building permits, good real estate data points there, along with the big one, the FOMC interest rate decision. And then Jerome Powell is going to be speaking at 2:30 Eastern. Thursday, initial jobless claims, existing home sales. Fed manufacturing survey, and then we have nothing planned for us on Friday. But like I said, you got some big events and energy coming in this week. It's going to be massive. Now, traditionally, what happens here? Fed will cut rates on Wednesday for the first time in 4.5 years. Now, the odds of a 50 basis point cut have gone from 2% this morning all the way up to over 50%. So now the markets are pricing in half a chance that the Fed's actually going to do a half percentage point cut or 50 basis point cut. You guys let me know what your prediction is in the comments down below. We're going to get 25. We're going to get 50. This morning, we actually got a letter penned by Elizabeth Warren and other leading Democrats begging Daddy Powell for a 75 basis point rate cut, right? So that's absolutely hilarious. I'll talk more on that in a separate video. But Elizabeth Warren and the gang, and if you're wondering, why that's so funny to me, is because we know who is backing Elizabeth Warren, right? The banksters are. And so when she's crying out about the rollover to Basel III, and she's telling Jerome Powell, we better be going through, we better check this, we better stall, we better hold up. And the banks have actually gotten the requirements have been actually dropped down or reduced from the original Basel III requirements. The banks have done what they always do. They cry like hell about the collateral requirements that they're going to be held to. And so they've actually gotten those amounts reduced. But then they get their puppets like Elizabeth Warren out here begging for 75 basis point rate cut and begging for Basel III to be stalled or postponed until the banks can get their ducks in a row. So anytime Elizabeth Warren speaks, we know that she's just representing the banksters that put her in her spot. But typically what we see here is that stocks usually fall 15% within 12 months following the first cut if there is a recession. If there's no recession, stocks rise by 10%. The key caveat is that we will know if there was a recession a few months after the cut. So first rate cuts coming in here September 18th, Wednesday, just like in 2007. Now, in 2007, we were headed into a recession, and they backdated the recession. Once again, this is how this always happens. Folks get confused. What do you mean we're in a recession? There's no recession. We still got positive GDP growth. Yeah, but look at the jobs numbers, right? Look at the depressed growth. Yes, we still have a positive GDP, but it got cut in half, right? Now, and you look at some of the other leading economic data points, you see what's happening. And then the other problem too is that, okay, the Fed's going to cut rates. What's going to happen with inflation that we did not get down to our 2% target? If we didn't get inflation down to 2% target and we're going to start cutting once again and easing the money, maybe turn back on that money printer, as I've been saying, no matter who gets elected, money printer goes back on, interest rates are going to get cut here. You start to fuel inflation once again. And that's without any crazy war happening. That's without any crazy assassination happening, right? And so in 2007, the Fed came to the table on September 18th and they started to cut rates. They cut rates over the next year. And the S&P 500 fell by 57% over the course of the next 360 days. So make your guys' bets. You guys let me know in the comments down below. Are we in a recession? If we are most likely going to be falling by 15% or more over the next 12 months for your traditional stock market. Now, what is this going to do for crypto? What's coming for crypto? When's crypto going to pump? Let's talk about it. This is from Quentin Francois on X. The average Bitcoin cycle starts 170 days after the halving, peaks 480 days after the halving. We are currently 147 days after the Bitcoin halving, which means sometime in the next month, we should be beginning or starting the next cycle up. So you look there in 2016 to 2017, that's when we got it going, right? We started to climb back up in 2016, had a little bit of a correction before we finished off that bull run. Through the second half of 2016, we got started, and then we finally topped out in December of 2017. Now, same thing happened, and I warned about this, right? That run-up that we got in 2019 before we had a correction, and then we had the March 2020 situation that absolutely killed us, and then we began the next phase of the bull run, which took us all the way up until November of 2021. Same setup. Now, this time around, we're in the same exact spot. A little bit of consolidation. Might get one more correction before the election, like I've been talking about. We might get another assassination attempt, and we were centimeters away from one of the biggest black swans we've probably ever had in our history. right? Doesn't have to be that bad. But you're seeing first rate cut. I think that we're going to see a correction after Wednesday. Basically, in anticipation of the rate cut, the market's running back up. It's going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news event. After it does come through, I'm expecting us to get that sell-off. Now, what's still going up, and what does this mean for crypto? It means that we're beginning the next phase of the bull run. So for crypto, remain patient, strap in, and be ready, be liquid. If you want to buy some more of these assets, if that correction does come through, be ready to execute, because we'll know here soon whether or not it's coming. And right now, it's funny because gold is sending the signal, and this is one of the assets that we've used to hedge our crypto bets, our risk-on bets, right? Gold and silver is on our defensive side of our portfolio as a hedge insurance policy against inflation and against stupidity, which there's a whole heck of a lot of that out there right now, right? And how is gold responding, right? While the markets were shut down yesterday, they started to open up for the futures. They started to open up in Australia and Asia, and gold started to run once again in response to the President Trump second assassination attempt. Gold ran up over 2,600 in the futures market. I'm looking at gold right now at 2,581 on this chart. But the gold's futures ran up over 2,616, I believe. Well over 2,600. It blasted through 2,600 yesterday. Now, silver went up and smashed through $31 again. Back testing here, $30.76. But we're pushing $31 again for silver. Now, the other one that I watched, and I talked about this one with my Discord group on Saturday in our Discord weekly call every Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. I meet with my group, do a private call, and I say, here's what I'm looking out for. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what to watch out for. And I mentioned specifically how on Saturday we were already starting to break, and we closed out on Friday actually below the levels that sparked the Japan carry trade unwind on August 5th last month. That sent the markets into full panic. The Fed had to come out. The Bank of Japan had to come out. Well, here we are. We're already below those levels. And then we get, the events of yesterday. We start out and we break down to a new level that we haven't been at now since, since the lows of December 23. But you have to go all the way back to July of 23 to when we were trading at this level here of 139. That's 139 US dollar versus Japanese yen. So we are breaking right now. Gold is sending a signal. The US dollar versus Japanese yen is sending a signal that the recession concerns are real, that we still are in the middle of a world war, that they still are trying to take out one of our presidents. They're still trying to take him out. Gold's pricing that in. US dollar, Japanese yen still breaking because they're raising rates over there in Japan, not by much, but the trend is moving back up for rates. While here in the United States, we're set to start cutting. And now we got the likes of Elizabeth Warren that are begging for a 75 basis point rate cut. And I got the Twitter bros are talking about how if we get a 25 basis point cut, it's bullish. If we get a 50 basis point, it's super bullish. And if we get a 75 basis, it's parabolic God candle. That's a tweet that I just read before I fired up this session here. These are the guys that are going to get cleaned out because they're betting on the caveat, right, that we're not in a recession, which they don't understand how to look at the jobs numbers, right? These guys are headline readers. These guys are pumpsters. And this is why these guys are never hedged for when, things aren't going up. It's easy to be a pumpster. It's easy to be a hypester when everything's going up. But when things are correcting, when things are adjusting, these are the guys that get absolutely cleaned out and liquidated completely on their positions because all they know how to do is go long and put out ridiculous hype tweets like that. Where I try to break this thing down. Hey, this is going down. What's going up? Gold's going up. What have we been talking about? Stacking precious metals as a hedge against inflation and stupidity and reckless government and World War III and assassination attempts. All of the above are reasons why we stack utility with no counterparty risk. Do you got gold? Do you got silver? Do you need more? ZachRector.com. We have resources available for you. If you want to get in touch with me, you want to book a one-on-one call, you want to join my private group, it's all linked up in the description down below, folks. If you appreciate our updates, make sure you guys stay tuned. Make sure you guys smack it, tap it, share it out far and wide. Be back later because we got more content on the way. This is going to be a busy week. You're going to want to stay tuned in with us. I appreciate you guys so much. Everything's at the website. God bless you all.